Okay. So anything you do or save will be in this folder. Also, anything you try to access. If you're trying to open a file, if you're trying to open an image, load an image, whatever, it's going to look first in this folder unless you tell it to do something else. So this is where you're working. It's the current directory or the current folder. All right, so here you can see there's nothing in this folder for me. It's totally empty. Here is the workspace. The workspace saves what are called variables. So if you create a variable, let's say the letter, we'll call it VARI for variable, you can assign it a value, say 4. So you can see here then that variable name is vary and the value that it stores is 4. You could click on this and it will show you here. It's 1 by 1, that's the size of it. And it's a double, that's the type of the variable. And it shows the value here, 4. All right, now, if I add another variable, we'll call it vary2, and we'll give it the value 5. We'll have 2 variables in the workspace. So now we could refer, for example, to vary and vary2. If we type in vary, we see the value, vary4. We type in vary2, we see the value, which is 5. So how can you name a variable? How can you name a variable? Well, it can have, it must start with a letter. So something like, letter. It could also include a number, but it cannot start with a number. So you can't say 2 var equals 1. That doesn't make sense, okay? So MATLAB's not going to accept that as a variable name. It will give you an error. So variable names, they must start with a letter. They could be capital letters. So var or VARI, notice here that it's different. The capital V is different from a lowercase v. So it's saying, I don't recognize that function or variable, whatever you just typed, I don't have it. Did you mean this? You could say, oh yeah, I did mean that. Press enter. So you could store a different value in vary with a capital V, call it 2. All right, so now we have vary and vary. 2 different values, 2 different variables. All right, you can, so notice here that every time I type in a variable, it's showing you the value stored in that variable. You don't have to do that. So let's say you want to create a new variable. We'll call it capital VARI2. We'll give it the value 10. Now, let's say I don't want to show this. I just want to keep it really simple. I can add a semicolon to the end. If I add a semicolon and press enter, it does the same thing. It's just not showing me what it's doing. So it can be a lot clearer. You can keep your command window cleaner. So vary2 is equal to 10. We can see it over here. Vary2 is 10. It just didn't show me. Now, if I type in vary2, it will show me vary2 equals 10. Let's say I want to create a new variable based on values I already have in other variables. I could say vary with a capital V3 is equal to vary plus vary2. Press enter. So it assigns the value to vary3 of vary plus vary2. So here's vary, it's 2, and vary2 is, it's this one, the capital V, it's 10. So then vary3 is equal to 2 plus 10, or 12. Now, I don't have to show it. I could say vary4 is equal to vary plus vary 2. Put a semicolon. Okay, it's not showing me anything, but it did the work. You can see it over here. Vary 4 is 12. You can check here. Vary 4 is 12. All right, so you can do all kinds of basic math or math with numbers by themselves. 43 times 2, 43 divided by 2, 43 raised to the 2, square root of 2, or square root of 43. All right. So all kinds of basic math. The basic math functions here hold. So you have plus 1 plus 2. You have minus 1 minus 2. You have multiply 1 times 1. You have divide 1 divided by 5. What other basic math is there? There's the exponent, like we said, 5 raised to the 3. Those are your basic math commands. And the notation for them: plus, minus, divide, multiply, exponent. Now, let's say, wow, our command window is really getting full. I want to start over. I want it to be clear. I can type CLC. If I type CLC, it clears the command window. Notice here, our workspace values are still there. So all of our variables are still here. We could refer to them: vary multiplied by vary 8. So that's the lowercase and the uppercase. Those are right here, 4 and 2, 8. I'll clear the command window again, CLC. Now let's say I want to get rid of all of these variables. I don't want anything that I've worked on. I can just type clear, clear. Now I don't have those variables. So vary, it has no value. It has no value. All right. So those, if you want to use Matlab as a calculator, it's a very powerful calculator. This is how you do it, right? You can use parentheses 1 times 2 plus 3, 5 minus 3 times 4. It's going to follow the order of operations. So here, type in the chat what you think the value would be of this. What would the value be? When I press enter, what will show? All right, so we see mostly -7s. That's right. So it's following the order of operations, which is multiplication first, and then the subtraction. So if 3 times 4 is 12, 5 minus 12 is -7. All right, so that's basically the same as this. Okay. Great. So these are, just like you would use a calculator, you could use Matlab in the command window. Now, most of what you do in Matlab should probably not be in the command window. That's not how Matlab is intended to be used. You use the command window for really quick things. You want to check something while you're running a code. That's the proper way to use it. That's the proper way to use the command window, just as a check, or you want to just have a quick command. Normally, what we do is create what's called a script. Now, to create a script, you press here, new script. This window will come up. I'll put these side by side. And you can type anything here. So let's say vary, V-A-R-I, is equal to 3. And then VARY we'll call it vary1, and vary2 is equal to 4. And then we want to say vary3 is equal to vary1 plus vary2. First, we need to save this to be able to run it. When you press run the first time, it will tell you to save it. So I press run and it'll show me, okay, this is my current location in Matlab workshop. Remember I told you it was empty. I'm gonna call it script 1. I'll press save, and here it just ran it. Now notice it didn't clear anything that was there before. It just ran it as if I typed these in right after this. Okay, so here you can see it ran script 1, and it displayed everything that it did. So it saved the value 3 to vary1, saved the value 4 to vary2, and saved the value 7 to vary3, because vary3 was vary1 plus vary2. Okay, now let's say, actually, I don't want any of these things. Well, before we do that, I can refer to these things in the command window. I can refer to these variables in the command window. So vary1 is there, I can see it in the workspace. I can use it, I can manipulate it. I could even change the value. Let's say vary1, I want the value to be 10 now. Notice that doesn't change the value of vary3. So vary3 is still 7. So I only change the value of vary1. Vary1 was 3. Vary2 was 4. When I added them together, here I got vary3, which was 7. Then I changed the value of vary1. I didn't change the value of vary3, it's already set. I could rerun it and say vary3 is equal to vary1 plus vary2. And now I'll get a new value for vary3 because I changed the value of vary1. Okay, I have a few questions. What is the difference if we write all of this in the command window, then save it? Okay, so you're saying you want to type it all here in the command window. Say vary1 is equal to 3, vary2 is equal to 4, vary3 is equal to vary1 plus vary2. The problem is there's no way to save this. You can't say file save. You can't save something in the command window. The only thing you could do is copy and paste it, but at that point, it just looks like that. Right? So that's not going to work. If you want to do something repeatedly, you want to be able to run it again and again, the best thing to do is run it in a script, is to create it in a script and then run it. Now, one thing, so let me clear all of the variables and start over. I'm going to run our script over here, vary1, vary2, and vary3. So we saw the values. Actually, I'm going to clear it again. And here I'm going to comment out this. Okay, so this means if I put this here, that's normally how you would make a comment. So you would say, below, I'm adding 2 variables. You can run it. It's going to show up just the same. Matlab just skips this line. It doesn't care what you write after it. You write the %, then you can write whatever you want. So now let's say I want to I just want to point out that if I have a variable 1 in here, let's call vary1, let's make it 6. If I run this script, it will save the value vary2, then it will go to the next line and save the value vary3, which is vary1 plus vary2. what will be the value for vary 1 if I press run right now? Okay, what will be the value of vary 3 if I press run right now? That's right. So I'll press run. Vary 1 was already saved. Vary 2 was 4. Vary 3 now is vary 1 plus 2, which is 10. Okay, so I saw a question above. So if we want to save, we will not write in the command window. That's right. If you want to save your work, if you want to do it again and again, don't write in the command window. You can save the script. Actually, every time you press run, it automatically saves. So you don't have to say file save and then press run. You can even see that it's gray because you just ran it. There's nothing, you didn't make any changes. Now I'll make a change. I'll add these semicolons because I don't want to show it every time I press run. Now it's blue, which means you can save it. But you don't have to do that. You could just press run. See, it saved it. So if I exit out of this and I open it again, it comes right back up. It's saved. Okay, now a good practice when you start a script in Matlab is to start with clear, close all, CLC. I always start my scripts like that, clear, close all, CLC. Close all is if you have an image. So let's say you have something like this open, you were working with it before. All right, and you just want to clear everything. You can type clear, gets rid of the workspace, close all, gets rid of these figures, and then CLC, clears the command window. It's just a fresh start. Clear, close all, CLC. A great way to start any script. All right, so we've talked about what you see when you open Matlab, a command window, and a script. Notice here, the script saves as the name .m. That's the extension for a script, .m. All right, we've talked about some basic math and some variables. And we've talked about how to clear everything, close everything, and clear the command window. Are there any questions so far? Anything confusing that I've talked about that you have a question about? Okay. Now, let's get into more complicated variables. So there are different ways you can create variables. Most often in MATLAB, or often in MATLAB, you'll have a variable that's more than one value. So far we've talked about, actually I'm going to change these to X, Y, and Z. It's easier to say. So we have X, Y, that's X and Y and Z. Most of the time in MATLAB, or often in MATLAB, you'll create a variable that's actually more than one value. So let's say we want to have the values 3, 4, and 5 and store it in a variable called A. How we can do that is by creating what's called a vector. So you can create a vector by including values in between square brackets. So we'll say A equals 3, 4, 5. Notice here, then we press enter, you can see the values of A. If we click in the workspace, you can see 3, 4, and 5. This is kind of like Excel, right? These are the values. All of these others are empty. They're all empty. Only the first 3 here have values, 3, 4, and 5. Now let's say that we don't want A to be that direction. Notice it was in the horizontal direction. Let's say we want it to be vertical. 3, 4, and 5 vertically. instead of using we'll call it B, instead of using a comma, you use a semicolon. We'll call it 6, 7, 8. So you can see B is vertical, not horizontal. All right. Question here, how did you open the table sheet? You just double click on the value in the workspace. So if I want to see A, I double click there. If I want to see B, I double click there. And they come up as tabs, so you can go back and forth if you want. I generally keep that closed. But if I want to check, that's one way to check. Okay. So now let's say I want to access the value in the first part of A. I want to access the value 3, the one that's in the first location of A. How I do that is I say A of 1. A of 1. This is the first location in A. Now, so the value is 3. Compare this to other programming languages that you might know. Perhaps you've done work in other languages. Other languages are what's called 0 indexed. So you would say 0, and that would show you the 3. Matlab is different in this way. It's 1 indexed. So the first value is referred to as 1. So then A of 2 shows you the second value, which is 4. And A of 3 shows you the third value, which is 5. If we type A of 4, well, we don't have that many. And so it gives you an error. It says index, this is the index, exceeds, it's greater than, the number of array elements. So a vector is also called an array. And the number of elements is 3. So there are 3 what are called elements, 1, 2, 3. And we were trying to access the 4th one, but we don't have a 4th one. But let's say, oops, I meant to include a 4th one. So I'll just type over here what we had, 3, 4, and 5. For B, we had 6, 7, 8. Again, A and B. Let's say, oops, we meant to have the value 6 in the 4th location. So we can actually add that value. So we can say A of 4 is equal to 6. It will show us all of A, and look, we've added to the 4th location the value 6. All right, so I have a question from Ahlam. Could you explain what you mean with your voice? Is that okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I mean, when we want the value for B, we complete like 1, 2, 3, 4 with B, or we start again 1 with B.
Okay, good. So if you want the first value of B, yes, you can say B of 1. If you want the second value of B, B of 2, B of 3, and then again, 4, it has no value. So it's going to give you the same error. Now, what's interesting about this, Matlab is smart in this way, is that A was horizontal, B was vertical, and we're still referring to it the same way, 1, 2, 3. The first location, the second location, the third location. So just keep that in mind. We don't have to create only one-dimensional matrices. So this is, a vector is a type of matrix. It's a one-dimensional matrix. But you can have a two-dimensional or even more than that matrix? I saw a hand, Nora. Let me explain this and then I'll come back to your question. So let's say we want to create a variable and we'll call it C. And we want C, I'll just do this. We want C to look like this. One, I'm just typing these manually into this editor. This is not a good way to do this, but you can if you need to. Okay, so we have the values of C. I just changed them manually. Not a good practice, but this is what C looks like. This is what C looks like. How can we create that by typing? Well, this is what we do. First, we have the values of the first row. We type 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we want to go to the next row. So we put a semicolon instead of a comma, and we type the next row, 10, 20, 30, 40. Then we want to go to the next row, 100. So we type a semicolon, 100, 200, 300, 400. We close the bracket and we type the semicolon to suppress the output. So I'll just copy and paste that here. And look, C didn't change. Okay, so we just did the same thing. I'll call it D now instead of C, just to show you. Call it D, and here we have D. Now, let's say this just kind of looks too ugly for you. Remember, Matlab goes line by line through a script. So when you press run here, remember I just closed all CLC. We created all of these variables. So here's C. MATLAB just went line by line. It did it in order, what I commanded it to. But let's say you want just this to look a little better. You can say ... press enter. And then again, ... enter. So this makes it a little more manageable so you can see what's on each row. So when MATLAB runs it, it's going to run this line, these 3 lines all at the same time. It considers them as one line. Okay, Nora, you had a question. What was your question? Okay, I don't hear a question from Nora. I do see a question in the chat. What if it was a square matrix? You could do the same thing. So a square matrix just means the number of rows and the number of columns are equal. So you would make it like this, maybe 1, we'll call it 5, 6, 7. 1, we'll call it 1, 2, 3, and
referring for a specific element in the matrix. How do you do that?
So this is a square matrix. If we copy and paste that here, you can see D is square. What was the question?
I said if I want to refer to a specific element, for example, the number 2 here, how do I write that?
Great. Yeah, good. So that's what I was going to cover next. Good question. So let's say we want to find a specific element in C. Remember, C looks like this. If we want to access the value in the 3rd column and the 2nd row, this 30 here, how do we do it? Well, MATLAB first, you refer to the height. So the height here, the row number, that's row 2, and then the column, that's column 3. So it's C of, this is the index, 2, 3. and there's 30. What will be the value? Type it in the chat. If I type C of 3, 4. That's right, 400. What will happen if I type in C of 4, 4? Yeah, an error, because we've exceeded the size of the array. All right, so if we want to change, let's say we want to change the middle row of C, instead of having 10, 20, 30, and 40, we want to have 11, 21, 31, and 41. We could do it like this. So we could change one element at a time. We could say C of 2, 1 is equal to 11. Notice we've changed this now. C of 3, 1, 2, 2 is equal to 21. We could do it like that. Or we could refer to the whole row. So let's just show that. Here's C again. Let's just show C of the second row, comma, all of the elements. So notice here I used a colon, not a semicolon, a colon. That means all of the elements in this row. I press enter and you'll see them all, 11, 21, 30, and 40. What will show if I type this? When I press enter, what will show to the command window? That's right, 1, 11, 100. But they won't be horizontal, they'll be vertical. So if I want to change the entire second row, I can say C of 2 colon equals, we'll call it 11, 21, 31, and 41. I changed the whole row. If I added an extra one on accident, let's say 51, it's going to give me an error because I tried to add an element that would make it uneven. I tried to add an element right here when it's not that wide. I could, however, say I want to add a whole new column. So I want to add a column. Let's say I want to add a column over here that's 5, 51, and 500. What command should I type to get that added onto C? Type in there in the chat what I should type. So I'm trying to add a column here, 5, 51, 500. What should I type here? All right. Good, good. So the answer I just saw is right. So we have C colon, comma, 5. So that's all of the heights in column 5. And remember, that doesn't exist yet, but we're creating it. Equals, how do we do it? Do we use commas or semicolons? We use semicolons because they're vertical. 5, 51, 500. If we were to use commas, the directions would be opposite because we're adding a column here. But if we used commas, that would be a row. Good. Also, make sure that you're using a lowercase c, not an uppercase c. Uppercase c, we don't have. Lowercase c, we do have. Okay, now I've been doing all of this in the command window, but anything I type in the command window, you can type over here in the script. Okay. Most of what you do in Matlab, again, will be in the script. Anything you type over here in the command window, you can do in the script. It just does it in order. In order. Any questions so far? Can I change only 2 or 3 variables? You can change as many variables as you want, as many as you want. Any other questions? Okay, great. So we've talked about vectors and matrices. A matrix is a multi-dimensional vector. So it could be 2 dimensions, could be a 3-dimensional matrix, in which case you would refer to it like this. We'll call it, we'll make a 3-dimensional matrix called F. So the first dimension, the second dimension, the third dimension. We could say, we want to create 3-dimensional matrix. We'll create the first dimension, or the first plane first. So this is like z equals 1, if you imagine a 3-dimensional plot. So the value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's type this over here. Okay, so F3 looks like this. F3 of all of the heights, all of the widths at that depth is equal to 1. Now we could add another depth. So F3 of 2, we can call it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So let's type F3. It's going to show us the first plane of F3 is this, what we entered here. The second plane of F3 is what we entered here. And then we could create another plane of F3, call it the third plane, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. F3 now looks like this. Plane 1, plane 2, and plane 3. We can refer to any location in F3. So how would I get this value 90? What would I type here? To get this value 90, what would I type in the command window? Okay, close, good. So it's F3 of 3, that's the height and the width, but we also need the depth. So it's 2, it's the second plane here. It's gonna give us the value 90. Okay, remember here we have a 3-dimensional matrix, F3. 3 by 3 by 3. Okay, can I add to the matrix in the script? Yes. So let's say we want to change the value of 90 to 91. We say F3 of 2, oh, sorry, it was 3, 3, 2 is equal to 91. Press run. Here's F3. We've changed the value in the second plane to 91. Yeah, if you type F3 of 3, 3, it says 9. It assumes you mean the first plane. It assumes you mean the first plane. If I want to get the values 100, 400, 700, what do I type here? I want to get the first column of the third plane. I want to see all three values. What do I type here? I want to get all three values in the first column of the third plane. So a good way to remember this is you do height, width, depth. So the height, you want all of them. Height, all of them. Width, only the first, because it's the first column. And then the depth is the third plane. Here you get 100, 400, 700. If you were to type 1:3, we just did the first height of all of the widths. Okay, so the first row for all of the columns, in the third plane. All right. Okay, let's see now. What we've done so far is we've been creating our own variables and doing simple math. Now, recall here, we have these values F3. We also have these values X, Y, and Z. If we want to say, instead of replacing 90 with 91, we say we want to replace it with X. Well, the value 3 will go there. Value 3 will go there. So let's run it. Hit F3. Value 3 went in our location right here. Okay, let's say we want to replace it with the value X plus Z. What value will show up in this location of F3? When I press run, what will be in this location of F3? People are saying 10. That's right. So how they're getting 10 is the value of X is 3. We calculate the value of Z. Of course, it's based on 3 and 4. So 3 plus 4 is 7. So Z is 7. X is 3, Z is 7. We're not changing them again. So X is 3, Z is 7. The value of 10 will go in this location. Let's press run and show it. Here it is. Okay. Let's say I add this here. Will that change anything? What will the value in this location be now? So here I am adding F3 is X plus Z. What will go in that location? All right, well, let's go. Let's go step by step. This is how Matlab does it, step by step. First line, X is 3. Then Y is 4, Z is 3 plus 4, Z is 7. Then X is changing to 6. X is no longer 3, but that doesn't change Z because we're only going in order. So Z is 7, X is 6. We're not changing them again until we see this. X is 6, Z is 7. So 6 plus 7, 13. 13. All right. I want to create a new variable, and I want it based on, yes, there's a question, go ahead. Is there a question? All right. I want to create a new variable. I want to call it G2. G2. And I'm gonna say G2 is equal to D plus F3 colon 2. Colon 2. What will display here? Can someone explain using your voice, what will show up as G2? Can I do this? Will it be an error?
No, it's the addition of the matrix T with the F3, the second one.
Okay, good. So it's the addition of this matrix and this matrix. How does it add them? Will I get one single value?
No, it's a matrix, a new matrix.
That's right. I'll get a new matrix. So each pair in the same location will add together. So D 1 1 will add to F3 1 1. So the first value in G2 will be 15. Then this location will add to this one. So it'll be 26 and so on. Oops, forgot a comment here. Okay, so G2 was just D plus F3 of colon 2. 5 plus 10 is 15. 6 plus 20, 26. 7 plus 30, 37. So on. One matrix called G2. Here it is. What will happen if I say F3 plus D? Let's see. What this did is it took F3, all three planes, and added to all three planes the values of D. So in the third plane, for example, it did F3 third plane plus D. So 100 plus 5, 105. 200 plus 6, 206. It did that in every single plane. Okay. Some of you are thinking, why does this matter? Why does, who cares? Why do I need to be able to deal with matrices like this? Well, matrices are very helpful for storing data. Sorry, let's just take about a 30-second break for the event. Okay. You've had a few minutes to think. Any questions before I present a few other things? Okay. Now, I want to discuss, we talked about the most basic way to create vectors. Let's kind of go back to A, B, and C, okay? Or A and B. This is the most basic way to create them, just like this. There are other ways, though, to create vectors. So we could say, let's just kind of, we'll get rid of this. Actually, I'll save this and we'll make a new one. We'll call it script 2. All right, there are other ways to create vectors. One of those is we could say x equals 3 space 4 comma, or space 5 space 6 space 7. Same thing for the x of 1, x of 4. It's the same thing as if you had a comma there. It's just better practice to include a comma. It's just better to include a comma. Another thing you could do is, and this is a very helpful tool, is you could say x is equal to, well, let's make this one 8. X is equal to 3 colon 8. Type that in. X is equal to 3 colon 8. This is what we see. So what Matlab has done is said, I will step by 1 all the way from 3 until I get to 8. From 3 to 8, step by 1. But let's say you don't want to step by 1. You could say, we'll call it y. We'll make that one y too. Z is equal to 3 colon 2 colon 8. What will happen here? 3, 5, 7. Okay, so we step by 2 instead of by 1. If you change this to 1, it's just going to be the same. 2, it's going to step by 2 until it reaches it. If we had 9 here, it would go to 9. So it's going 3, 5, 7, reaches 8, and it stops. All right. We could also step by a negative number. So we could say A equals 8 negative. Actually, I think we can do this. No, we have to say negative 1 colon. If we don't have the value in between, it assumes 1, like here. But we want negative 1. We want to step by a negative value. So here, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Another thing we could do is to create a, so here, these are spaced by a certain amount. We could also create a vector using what's called a function, and we'll come back to this. A function called Linspace. This is linearly spaced, okay, Linspace. And we say we want to go from 0 to 10, and we want to have 3 elements from 0 to 10 with 3 elements. So the first value will be 0, The second value, or the last value, will be 10. And however many elements it needs, or however many, if it needs 3 elements, it will space them equally. So that the distance between the first 2 is the same as the distance from the next 2, so on. If I said 4, what would the values be? What would the values of B be? So there would be 4 values. It would, I'll just press run and show you. 0, 3.3, 6.6, and 10. Okay. There are 4 elements. We have to have 4 elements. They're all equally spaced. Equally spaced. If I say 5, what would it be? Press run so we can see 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5, and 10. Again, 5 elements, all equally spaced. I don't understand the question actually. So you say the function is of A is different than B. Can you ask, using your voice, explain a little more what you mean? Okay, I'll just refer to A a little bit. So let's say we change A to B. We want to go from 0 to 1, and we want to step by 0.1. Let's just show that here. Okay, so there are 11 columns, 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, all the way to 1. Okay, 0 step by 0.1 all the way to 1. Linspace is different. We say it's a function. So Linspace, the first value, the second value, what should go here? What should go here? To make B equal to A, what should go in this blank? Not 0.1, because we're not using the step size. These are 2 different methods for creating a vector. So good thought, yes, 11. So this is the length of the vector, the length. So we'll press run here. Okay, so A and B are the same. One thing I want to show you, and then I'm going to take, let's say a 5-minute break, just so we can have some time, and then we'll start again. So one thing you can do to these is transpose. Okay, to transpose means it rotates it. So we've made it instead of a row, it's a column now, just by adding this apostrophe. Okay, let's, yeah, so for Linspace, if you need help with it, and this is the case for anything, Linspace is a function. So you can type help and then Linspace. Help space Linspace. And it will show you, it will explain. So Linspace is linearly spaced vector. Linspace x1, x2 generates a row vector of 100. So here you're not including the third element, it makes 100. But if you include the third element, like this is how we've done it. It generates n points, so that many points between x1 and x2. okay? So if you ever need help with a function, just type help and then the name of the function. All right, let's take a 5-minute break. It's 11:40 right now. We'll be back at 11:45 and we'll resume for 15 or 20 more minutes after that, all right? All right, I just put a link to just a brief survey on Google. If you could go ahead and fill that out. It's very short. I'm just curious to know what the class level was like for you. If you thought it was very hard and too fast, click 5. If you thought it was very easy or slow, press 1. If you thought it was just right, press 3 on that in the chat. And then any questions or comments you have, feel free to comment there as well. So I'll wait 30-ish seconds for this, and then we'll continue. All right, feel free to continue selecting your answer if you need to. It looks like it's fairly distributed around number 3, so I suppose anyway. So let's go ahead and go back to Matlab here. And I want to go through just a few more functions. I mentioned functions here, Linspace. Linspace is a function that does something particular. It's a command that does something particular. These functions in Matlab Matlab just knows what to do when you type it. These are called built-in functions. Built-in functions. There are other functions that you can create called user-defined functions, and we'll get to that in a later workshop. But for now, we're going to talk about built-in functions. So some other built-in functions that you can use, particularly related to vectors or arrays, matrices, are things like length. So let's go back over here. We have X, Y, Z, and A and B. If we type length of X, Matlab will return the length of X. So there are 6 elements in X. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It gives us the length. We could also type in size of X. Will give us this. Okay, it's 1 row, 6 columns. 1 row, 6 columns. Let's open again script 1 and run it. So here, remember we had F3 from before. F3 was 3-dimensional. It had 3 planes of 2 dimensions each. So if we say size of F3, it will give us the size in the first dimension. That's the height. The size in the second dimension, that's the width. And then the size in the third dimension, that's the depth. Okay, so 3, 3, and 3. They're all the same here. So that's, maybe a little confusing, but this is the height, the width, and the depth. Someone tell me what will be returned if I say size of F3 colon of colon 2. What will be returned when I press enter? So let's see. It's 3 and 3. And the reason is because when I type F3 of colon 2, this is what it's considering. So when I say size of this, it's going to give 3, 3. It's 3 in height, 3 by 3 in width. What about this? What will be returned now? So remember, it's 3, 2. It's 3, 2. It's the height. Here, I'll put this here so we can visualize it. It's the height, the number of rows, and then the width. Okay, so the number of columns, 3 and then 2. I saw there was a hand raised. If you have a question, you can go ahead and ask. I didn't see who it was.
Doctor?
Yes.
Can you explain the second one?
This one here? Excuse me.
No, the previous.
This one here, sure.
Yeah.
So when you type size, it's going to consider whatever you put inside of it. So what did I put inside of size? Well, I put this. So I'm going to copy this and put it down here. These values here are what it's considering. So another way to do this would be to say size of, just like I typed it here, I could say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 3 by 3. Right, so this here is just pointing to these actual values. It's pointing to these values. And because we're only considering the second dimension, it's not looking, it doesn't even know that there is a third dimension. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see. The other thing I want to discuss is we talked about transpose for, let's see, we had like A and B. So A and B. A is horizontal, B is vertical. When we add A and B, we get this weird thing, right? Because they're horizontal and vertical, it just does this odd thing, okay? Instead of this, if we want to add A and B directly, say element by element, what we should do is transpose A and add it to B. So remember, A transpose just rotates it from horizontal to vertical, and then it adds them. Or we could say A plus B transposed, and we would have a row instead of a column. Transposing doesn't only work with vectors like A or B, it also works with matrices like C. So if I type in C transpose, it flips it around the diagonal. So if the value here, 2, instead of being in location 1, 2, it's now in location 2, 1, right there. Or let's consider D transposed. Let's say I create a variable called y2 is equal to D transposed. And then I say y2 of 2 or 3, 1. What value will show when I press enter? Okay, so I see one, Ahlam says 7. Any other ideas? Well, here, let's do it step by step. Let's do the first one first. Y2 is equal to D transposed. All right, so it just flipped it. All right, so 3, 1 became 1, 3. 3, 1 became 1, 3. Now, when I say y2 of 3, 1, 3 is the height, 1 is the width, so the column. So the answer is 7. Okay, let's do another one. Let's say GH is equal to Y2. I'll clear the screen first. We have Y2 and we have D. Let's say that GH is equal to Y2 plus D transposed. Then what is the value of GH3, 1? Okay, it's a little trickier now. What's the value GH3, 1? Okay, I'm seeing lots of 11s. I'm assuming you are typing these in. Maybe you're not, maybe you're doing it in your head. Let's just do this first. Okay, that's without the transpose. Now let's do it with the transpose. Notice the flip. Now, height 3, column 1, 11. All right, hold on 1 second. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. For today, let's not have a breakout session. I don't think we covered enough material to have a good breakout session. And some of you don't have computers and things like that. So next, we'll end right here. In next week's workshop, what I want you to do is bring your computers. You could be even sitting by each other in teams if you want, like physically. or I'll put you in breakout groups. And at the end of class, for the last, say, 30 minutes or so, I will put you into breakout groups on Zoom. You'll work on a problem together, and I'll come around to the rooms and make sure that you're making progress on the problem and things like that, okay? So just as a review, today we talked about what MATLAB is. What do you see when you open it? What are all of these things? This is the location, the folder, the workspace, the command window, scripts. We talked about how to create or how to do simple math in the command window, how to do that math in the script, how to save scripts, and then how to create vectors, and then matrices, how to manipulate those vectors and matrices, change single values, add a column, add a row. How do we get the size of it? How do we change it in different ways? And we briefly started talking about functions. So we talked about different kinds of functions. We'll talk more about functions in the next class, all right? So with that, we will end, and I will see you next time. If you have any questions, please message me on Teams, or you can put your questions in the survey link that I sent. Just again, I'll send it in case you haven't done the survey. Let's see, where is it? All right, so I will go ahead and click that. I will end the recording.